He found her sleeping on his ranch and whispered, "You're coming home with me." The sun had not yet broken through the thick, dusty haze that hung like a veil over the Wyoming horizon. Morning on the McRae ranch came quiet and heavy, as it always did. The windmill creaked on its hinge. Crows perched on the fence line waited for movement, and Elias McRae stepped out of his weather-beaten cabin with a steaming tin cup in one hand and a worn rifle in the other, more out of habit than necessity. He didn't expect company. He hadn't for years. But halfway to the barn, just as his boots met the first patch of trodden hay, he stopped. Beneath the overhang where the sun hadn't reached, curled tightly between a barrel and the wall of the barn, lay a figure, small, still, barely breathing. His fingers tightened on the rifle, but his instincts overrode caution. Something about the way she was folded in on herself, like a wounded fawn trying not to be seen, made him lower the barrel. She was young, maybe in her 20s, her skin pale beneath layers of dirt. Her long, dark brown hair was tied in a tangled low bun with loose strands falling over her cheek. Her dress, a faded blue, was torn and clung to her knees. She wore one scuffed boot, the other foot was bare. In her arms she clutched a cloth-wrapped bundle against her chest with the desperation of someone who'd lost too much to risk one more thing. Elias crouched slowly, setting the rifle aside and resting the cup in the dirt. "Miss," he said low and gravelly. Her eyes shot open, brown, wide, and panicked. She tried to push herself up, but her legs buckled and she slumped back. Her breath came fast, but she didn't scream, didn't beg. She looked at him like a creature used to being hunted. "You're on private land," Elias said evenly. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean, I was just tired. I didn't know where else to go." "You sleep here last night?" She nodded barely. "You eat anything?" She shook her head. Elias glanced toward the cabin, then back at her. She was trembling, but from cold or fear he couldn't tell. He reached out slowly, offering a rough, calloused hand. "I won't ask your name if you don't want to give it," he said, "but you're not staying out here. You'll come in, wash up, get warm, eat." She stared at his hand like it was a trap. "Why?" He looked her in the eye. "Because I've seen that look before, on men who came back from the war and on women who lost more than they could say. And because decent folks don't let someone freeze outside a full house." Her bottom lip quivered. Slowly, she gave him her hand. Her fingers were ice. He helped her to her feet with steady care. She winced as she stood, favoring her right leg. Elias noticed but didn't comment. Instead, he bent, picked up her bundle without asking, and nodded toward the cabin. They walked in silence, the only sound the crunch of boots and bare foot on dry dirt. Just as they reached the porch, he said it, quiet but certain. "You're coming home with me." She stopped at the threshold, staring at him, her eyes glassy with disbelief. And for the first time in weeks, she stepped inside without fear. The warmth of the cabin hit her like a memory. The fire in the stone hearth burned low but steady, casting flickering shadows across the walls made of old pine. The air smelled faintly of cedar, dust, and something freshly baked, maybe cornbread from the night before. The girl, if she could still be called that, stood motionless just inside the doorway, her bundle clutched tightly to her chest like armor. Elias walked ahead of her without a word, placing the bundle gently on the small table by the window. He didn't ask her to sit. He didn't rush. He simply poured another cup of coffee, placed it beside the bundle, and turned to tend the fire. His silence wasn't cold. It was spacious, like he was giving her room to breathe again. After several long seconds, she stepped forward cautiously, as if testing the floor. She didn't take off her boot, nor did she unwrap her bundle, but she sat, her fingers barely touching the handle of the cup. "What's in there?" Elias asked, motioning toward the bundle. She stiffened. "Nothing worth stealing." "I wasn't gonna take it." Silence again. Then, with a deep breath, she added, "A Bible, a comb, a photograph." Elias nodded, as if that explained everything. "That all you've got?" "It's all I kept." He leaned against the hearth, arms crossed. "You got a name?" She stared at the fire. "You can call me May." "That your real name?" "It's the one I'm using." He didn't press her, just nodded again. All right, May. The name hung in the room like a hesitant truce. She looked up then, really looked, and saw Elias properly for the first time. His face was weathered, with lines etched deep from sun and grief. His eyes were the color of ashwood, pale and steady but not unkind. His clothes were plain, flannel shirt, suspenders, dark trousers. But it was the stillness in him that struck her. He was a man who didn't need to fill silence with sound, and that made her feel strangely safe. I don't intend to stay long, she said softly. You can stay as long as you need. She blinked, not used to offers without conditions. Why? 'Cause something put you on my land for a reason, and I don't turn folks away who don't got anywhere else to go. She looked down at her hands, now wrapped around the warm tin cup. You don't know what I've done. I know what I see now. You're tired, you're hungry, and you're afraid. That made her pause. Then, like a crack in a dam, the edge of her voice broke. They think I stole money from the general store. I didn't, but it didn't matter. You running from the law? No warrant, just gossip and eyes that don't blink. I ran because the town made it clear I wasn't welcome anymore. Elias didn't flinch. You ain't the first they tried to chase out. She gave a short, bitter laugh. And you? What did they run you out for? He didn't answer, just turned back to the fire, tossing in another log. You'll sleep in the spare room, he said. It ain't much, but it's clean. She followed him with her eyes, but didn't move. I won't lock the door, he added. You're free to go, or stay. That night, as May lay in a bed softer than any she'd touched in months, staring at the wooden ceiling, she thought about the man who didn't ask for anything, who didn't look at her like a burden, or a threat, or a shame. For the first time in what felt like forever, she fell asleep before the fire died. The next morning, May woke to birdsong and the faint creak of the windmill outside. For a moment, she forgot where she was. The room smelled of cedar and sunlight. A patchwork quilt lay over her legs, and her bare feet touched a woven rug that had been mended too many times to count. It wasn't a grand place, but it was the first roof over her head that didn't come with strings or suspicion. She sat up slowly, wincing at the ache in her leg. A small wash basin stood on a wooden stand by the window, with a folded towel beside it. Next to it, a bar of lavender soap, wrapped in a strip of cloth like it hadn't been touched in years. She stared at it for a long time before splashing cold water on her face. When she stepped into the kitchen, Elias was already there, seated at the table, sipping his coffee. The plate in front of her seat held a slice of cornbread and 2 boiled eggs, still steaming. Her bundle was tucked in the corner, untouched. He didn't look up. Hope you like it plain. I like it warm, she replied, voice dry but almost grateful. They ate in silence, the way strangers do when they're pretending not to be. Elias finished first. He rose, put on his hat, and said simply, I'll be in the pasture. If you're staying, there's firewood to stack. May didn't answer, but after he left, she washed the dishes and wiped down the counter with the edge of her sleeve. Then she stepped outside, blinking against the morning sun. The air out here felt different, less heavy than town. The trees whispered rather than judged. She spotted the woodpile by the shed and set to work, dragging small logs over and stacking them neatly. Her arms were thin, her hands soft with inexperience, but she moved steadily. As sweat gathered at her brow, she realized she was breathing, not hiding, not running, just working. From the field, Elias watched from behind the fence, unnoticed. He saw how she paused often, shaking out her arms, but didn't stop. He saw the way she brushed a strand of hair from her face with the back of her wrist, eyes focused. No one had asked her to help. She just did. At dusk, May sat on the porch, sipping a second cup of coffee. Her hands were blistered and her dress clung to her back, but she didn't complain. Elias joined her with a quiet grunt, easing into the chair beside her. My wife used to sit right there, he said after a while. May didn't speak, sensing the weight in his voice. She planted sunflowers out front, said they reminded her not everything beautiful had to last forever. May looked out to where the dry stalks still stood, brown and brittle, like forgotten promises. She's gone? 3 winters now. I'm sorry. Elias nodded. I've learned to stop asking why. They sat in silence as the sun dipped below the hills, leaving the ranch bathed in gold and hush. For the first time in years, May didn't feel like a fugitive. She felt invited. That night before bed, she placed her bundle beside the quilt and gently unfolded the shawl. Inside was a faded photograph of a woman with a sharp chin and soft eyes, holding a little girl in her lap. May stared at it for a long time, then tucked it beneath the pillow. Outside her room, she heard the low creak of Elias settling into his old armchair, and though neither said it, both felt the shift. Two strangers learning that silence, when shared, could start to feel like home. The days passed with the quiet rhythm of rural life. May rose with the sun, helped in the kitchen, and kept herself busy with small chores, sweeping the porch, patching torn curtains, scrubbing the floorboards until her hands turned raw. She still walked with a slight limp, and she never ventured past the gate, but the weight in her eyes was beginning to lift just barely. Elias said little. He never asked where she went when she stared off into the distance, or why she sometimes startled at loud sounds. He simply made sure there was wood inside before sunset, that her water basin was always filled, and that her place at the table was set each night. His kindness wasn't loud, it was in the doing, but peace in the West never lingered long. One afternoon, as May hung a damp blanket on the line behind the cabin, the sound of hooves approached from the east trail. She froze, heart lurching. Through the dust, a man on horseback appeared, his vest marked with a brass badge glinting in the light. Sheriff Alden Carr rode like a man who knew he was watched. He reined in beside the porch and dismounted with the heavy confidence of someone who'd delivered bad news before. Elias stepped out of the barn, wiping his hands with a rag. "Afternoon, Alden." "Elias," the sheriff said with a nod, glancing around. "Didn't mean to surprise you." "You didn't." Alden looked past Elias toward the cabin. "Word's been going around that someone's been staying here. A young woman. Matches a description I've been asked about." Elias didn't flinch. "Plenty of folks pass through these parts." "True, but this one's different. She's wanted for theft. General store in Two Pines reported missing funds. Owner claims a girl named May worked there 3 weeks, then vanished the same day the money did." Elias folded the rag slowly, deliberate. "I haven't seen anyone by that name." The sheriff studied him. "You sure about that?" Elias met his gaze. "You calling me a liar?" A pause. Then Alden lifted his hat and sighed. "No, I ain't. Just doing my job." He mounted his horse again, scanning the fields. "If she shows up, best you let me know. Things tend to get messy when folks hide fugitives." With a final look, he turned and trotted off down the road. Only when the dust settled did May step out from behind the woodpile, her face pale and rigid. "You lied for me." Elias shrugged. "Wasn't a lie. You're not who they say you are. You don't know that. I know you've been here every day, earning your keep. Not stealing from my table. That's enough." She stared at him, something unreadable behind her eyes. "You'll get in trouble. Maybe." "Why would you risk that?" He hesitated, then said, "Because I see someone worth protecting." Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. She nodded, turned, and walked quickly toward the cabin. That night, Elias found his dinner plate already set when he came in. The fire crackled warmer than usual, and on the table beside his fork, folded neatly, was a scrap of paper that read in careful handwriting, "Thank you for not asking who I was." Spring crept in slowly that year. The snowmelt trickled down from the hills like reluctant forgiveness, and patches of green began to break through the brittle earth. On the McRae ranch, life followed its quiet order. Morning chores, evening silence, coffee always hot, words always spare. May spent her afternoons in the yard, sleeves rolled to the elbow, her skirt knotted at the side to keep from dragging in the dirt. Elias had noticed her lingering near the edge of the property, beside the old fence where nothing had grown for years. One day, without asking, she cleared the weeds, dug narrow rows, and planted something. He didn't interrupt. He simply brought her a tin pail of water and left it beside her boot. "What are you planting?" he asked that evening, wiping his hands on his trousers as he watched her from the porch. "Wildflowers," she said. "They don't ask for much. Just a little space and a reason to reach up." He nodded as if he understood, though she wasn't sure he did. Days passed. The seeds did not sprout, but May kept watering them. She repaired the fence beside them too, hammering each nail with more force than necessary, like she was rebuilding something no one could see. One morning she found a worn pair of gloves folded neatly on the post. She looked toward the field where Elias worked. He didn't wave, he didn't smile, but he had seen her blisters. Later that week, Elias sat on the porch sharpening a rusted knife when May stepped out, a scrap of fabric in her hand. "This window rattles when it storms," she said, holding up a stitched curtain with uneven seams. "Thought I'd fix it." "Looks good." She flushed slightly. "My stitching's crooked." "It'll hold." That was all he said, but something in the way he said it warmed her more than any compliment could. As the sun sank low behind the hills, May brought out 2 chipped mugs. They drank in silence, side by side, watching the sky turn to fire and then to dusk. She studied Elias out of the corner of her eye, the way his shoulders slumped when he didn't think anyone was watching, the way he ran a thumb along the edge of his cup, like he was chasing a thought he didn't want to say out loud. She dared a question. "What happened to her?" He didn't look at her. "Who?" "Your wife." Elias was quiet a long time. Then, in a voice as soft as creaking floorboards, he said, "Her name was Anna. She liked quiet places and good bread. Died in the second winter after the fever came through." "I'm sorry." He nodded, accepting the words but not needing them. "You never remarried. Didn't see the point. Some things don't get replaced. They just get quieter." May wrapped her arms around her knees. "I thought I'd marry once. Had someone who wanted to, but life got loud before we ever got around to it." "He hurt you?" "No, life did." The silence that followed was heavy but not cruel. Elias stood, stretching his back. "Rain's coming tomorrow," he said. "We'll cover your garden." "It's not really a garden yet." "It will be." As he stepped inside, May looked toward the bare rows of dirt. The first sprout had broken the soil. Just one. But it was enough. The next time May entered town, it wasn't by choice. They needed flour, salt, and a new bag of feed for the mule. Elias had offered to go alone, but May insisted. "If I'm going to live like I belong here," she said, "I can't keep hiding like I don't." Elias studied her for a long moment before nodding. He didn't argue, but he saddled the wagon slower than usual that morning. As they rode into 2 Pines, the silence between them was different, no longer awkward, but thick with unspoken warnings. May pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders, eyes fixed on the horizon as the first buildings appeared. The town hadn't changed. The same weathered signs, the same cracked boardwalks, the same people with narrowed eyes watching from porches. The general store stood at the corner, its windows dusty but familiar. May's hands gripped her skirt tightly. Inside, Elias gathered the supplies while May wandered the aisles, forcing herself to breathe. A bell rang behind her. She turned and froze. It was Clara Deems, the store owner's sister, tall, sharp, and as bitter as vinegar. Her eyes locked onto May like a hawk spotting a snake in its field. "Well, look what the wind blew back," Clara said, loud enough for half the store to hear. May opened her mouth, but no words came. Clara stepped closer. "You think folks forget. You think changing your dress and hiding behind a man's porch makes you clean." Elias rounded the corner, hands full of flour and beans. His eyes settled on Clara. "Is there a problem?" "She's the problem," Clara snapped. "She took from this town, and now she thinks she can just stroll back in like it didn't happen." "She hasn't taken a thing from you," Elias said, calm but firm. Yet, people had gathered now. A whisper rolled through them, like wind through wheat. May felt their eyes like lashes across her skin. Elias turned to the storekeeper. "You got proof she did what they say?" The man, short, balding, with eyes that never met yours, fidgeted. "Not exactly. Just what Clara said. The till was short, and May was gone. That's all." "People talk, Elias. People lie." The words landed like a slap. Silence fell. Clara's mouth opened, then shut. Elias paid for the supplies and placed a hand on May's back, guiding her gently out the door. They rode home without a word, but when they arrived, May jumped down from the wagon, fists clenched. "I shouldn't have gone," she said, voice shaking. "I made things worse." "No," Elias said, unloading the sacks. "They were always going to say what they wanted. Doesn't matter if you wear rags or gold. Some folks just need someone to point at. But now you're part of it. They'll turn on you too." He paused, then looked her square in the eye. "Let them." The words struck something deep. Not defiance, not pride, just quiet certainty. She stepped closer. "You really don't care what they think?" "I care about what's right." She stood still, unsure what to say. Then Elias picked up the final sack and added, "You ever think about staying for good?" May blinked. "What?" "I'm not asking now, just asking if the thought ever crossed your mind." Her voice was barely audible. "It has." And for the first time since arriving, she felt less like someone borrowing a place, and more like someone being offered one. 3 days passed after the incident in town, and neither May nor Elias spoke of it again. But something shifted. May moved through the house differently now, more aware, more cautious. The old feeling had crept back, the sense that her peace here was borrowed, temporary. The garden still grew, the mule still brayed at dawn. Elias still set 2 mugs on the table every morning. But May began folding her things at night, quietly, just in case. On the 4th evening, just as the sky began to bleed into dusk, a knock came at the gate. Elias opened the door slowly, rifle slung over his shoulder. Outside stood a man in a dusty coat, leaning heavily on a cane, and behind him a boy, maybe 10 years old, clutching the man's coat with one hand and a sack in the other. "Mr. McRae," the man said, hat in hand. "Name's Calvin Briggs. I used to tend the horses at the Deems place." Elias said nothing, just nodded. The man's voice cracked. "I heard about what happened in town, about the girl you got here." "May." From the porch, May stiffened. She couldn't see the man's eyes from where she stood, but she recognized the voice. He had been there that day, the day the money vanished. Calvin swallowed hard. That money they say she stole? It wasn't her, wasn't even missing. Clara took it, hid it in her husband's saddlebag, trying to catch him with another woman, and run off. I saw her. I kept quiet, 'cause they threatened to take my boy if I talked, said I'd never work again. But when I saw May's face in town, I couldn't keep it in anymore." Elias stepped aside without a word, letting the man and boy sit on the porch bench. He brought water without being asked. May stayed at the door, frozen. "I'll swear it under oath," Calvin said. "She didn't take a thing. The only crime she ever committed was being too quiet for her own good." May's breath caught. The boy looked at her with wide, soft eyes. "I remember you," he said. "You gave me an apple once when my dad couldn't buy food, said it was a mistake in the count." She smiled faintly. It was. When Calvin and his son left, the truth walked with them. The next morning, something strange happened in town. The pastor stopped Elias on the road, muttered an apology, and asked if May might return to church someday. The schoolteacher left a basket of bread at the ranch gate. Even the store owner sent a note. "Clara's gone to her sister's in Denver. I regret the mistake." May read the letter twice, then folded it neatly and placed it in the stove. That night, as the wind carried the scent of fresh rain through the windows, Elias found her sitting alone on the porch steps. "You're quiet," he said. "I don't know what to do with peace," she answered. He sat beside her, arms resting on his knees. "You don't have to do anything with it. Just let it stay." She glanced at him, eyes soft. "Why'd you believe me when no one else did?" He didn't look at her when he spoke. "Because I know what it's like to lose something and have no one believe you ever had it in the first place." They sat that way for a long time, the stars coming out slowly above them. She reached for his hand. He didn't move away. And in that small act, beneath the quiet hush of a forgiving sky, the past loosened its grip. The days that followed were the quietest yet, but not the kind of quiet born from fear or doubt. It was a deeper quiet, the kind that settles over a place when something has been made right. Elias had always kept the back room locked. It was where Anna had sewn quilts in the late afternoons, where she read psalms out loud when storms rolled in. After her passing, Elias had closed the door and never gone back. Dust had gathered like time itself, thick, untouched, unmoved, until that morning. May found him in the hallway, keys in hand, staring at the door like it might speak. He turned when he heard her footsteps, but didn't smile. "I was thinking," he said. "Might be time to open it again." May didn't answer. Her gaze dropped to the worn brass knob. The silence that hung between them felt sacred. With a quiet click, the door opened. The room was dim and still. A faded rocking chair by the window, shelves lined with books now bowed from the years. A patchwork quilt half finished on the bed. A cracked porcelain pitcher still holding a wilted stem, dry and grey. Elias stepped aside. "If you want it, it's yours." May hesitated. "You sure?" He nodded. "Anna believed in giving things to those who needed them. She would have offered it before I ever had the nerve." She stepped inside slowly, as if the floor might give beneath her. She ran her fingers over the desk, over the threads and buttons still scattered like small memories. Her voice trembled. "I've never had a room that didn't feel like a borrowed corner. You do now." Over the next few days, she cleaned every inch of it. Dusting, scrubbing, sewing fresh curtains out of old sheets. She pressed lavender sprigs between the pages of the books. She didn't erase Anna's presence. She honored it and made space for her own. Elias, for his part, never hovered. But he started bringing in small things without comment. A new lamp, a repaired drawer handle, a fresh bar of soap wrapped in brown paper. Every object felt like a word he didn't say. One evening, May stepped out wearing a dress Elias had never seen before. It was simple, but clean, mended carefully. Her hair was braided back, and her posture stood straighter than usual. "You look different," he said. "I feel different." They shared supper, and afterward Elias lingered on the porch while May sat cross-legged in the garden, pulling weeds that had tried to sneak between her wildflowers. She hummed a tune under her breath, something soft and wordless. He couldn't place it, but it stirred something in him, something long buried. As dusk painted the sky in shades of mercy, May walked back to the porch. She leaned against the post beside him, their shoulders close but not touching. "I used to dream about a place like this," she said, "but I never thought I'd be allowed to stay." Elias looked straight ahead. "Sometimes the things meant for us don't arrive until we stop chasing what was never ours." She turned to him. "Do you ever think about starting over?" He met her eyes. "I think we already did." She smiled, not out of gratitude or relief, but from something deeper, something earned. Inside, the fire crackled. The room that once belonged to a memory now held a new one. One with no strings, no debt, no fear. A room with her name on it. Summer arrived on the ranch like a sigh, warm, slow, and full of light. The wheat field behind the house, once dormant and brittle, now swayed with golden promise. May had begun waking earlier than Elias, not out of obligation, but because she wanted to. Some mornings she walked the edge of the field barefoot, dew clinging to her hem. Other days she helped Elias mend fences or chase down the stubborn mule who refused his saddle. Their rhythm was unspoken. She moved in his orbit and he allowed it, neither pushing nor pulling, just staying, just being. One morning, as she hung damp laundry on the line, Elias appeared with a second coffee mug in hand. "I sharpened your knife," he said, offering the mug like it was part of the sentence. May accepted it with a small smile. "That blade couldn't cut bread last week." "You shouldn't be using it for bread," he grumbled, then sat on the porch. She joined him a moment later. They drank in silence, watching the wheat sway in the breeze. The air smelled of earth and wind and the faint sweetness of something new blooming. "Would you have let me stay?" May asked softly. "If I really had taken that money?" Elias didn't answer right away. He sipped his coffee and set it down beside him. "I've seen men steal for greed," he said, "and I've seen women steal for hunger. I don't judge the same way others do. That's not a no. It's a maybe. And maybe's more grace than most get." She nodded, eyes misty. I never told you what I really lost. You don't have to. I want to." She paused, looking out across the field. "My mother died when I was 14. My father left 2 years later. No note, no goodbye. I worked in kitchens, shops, places where no one remembered my name. That town, it wasn't the first to throw me out, but it was the first that almost made me believe I deserved it." Elias didn't interrupt. His silence was a safe place. "I was never planning to stop here," she said. "I just couldn't walk any farther." He turned to her then, eyes steady. "Some places find us when we run out of road." The wind picked up, rustling the wheat like a whisper. May stood slowly and walked toward the field. She stepped into the rows, fingertips grazing the tall stalks. The sun painted her hair in copper strands, and her shadow stretched long behind her. Elias followed at a distance. Halfway through the field, she stopped and turned to face him. "Do you still miss her?" she asked. "I always will," he said. May nodded. "Then I won't ask to take her place." "You're not supposed to," he said gently. "But you've made space beside it." She stepped closer, eyes searching his face. He didn't look away. And then, without ceremony, without pretense, he leaned in, not to kiss her, but to whisper 4 words that made her knees tremble. "You're coming home with me." This time, it wasn't an invitation. It was a promise. She exhaled, steady and sure. "I already did." They stood together in the field as the sun dipped low. 2 souls no longer waiting to be chosen, no longer afraid of staying. And for the first time in either of their lives, love didn't need to be spoken aloud. The ranch no longer felt like a place May had stumbled into. It breathed differently now, slower, softer. The porch boards didn't creak quite so bitterly. The breeze through the window carried more lavender than dust. And for the first time, there was laughter at the dinner table. Quiet, careful laughter that waited for permission before blooming. May still rose early, but she no longer rushed. She moved through the kitchen humming tunes from childhood. She taught Elias how to mend a button properly, and he taught her how to patch a fence without splitting the rails. Neither said it aloud, but the space between them had changed. The town, too, had shifted in its own way. The schoolteacher waved when they passed. The pastor tipped his hat. The children from the church no longer crossed the street when they saw her coming. No one apologized directly, but they didn't have to. Some debts were paid in silence. One afternoon, Elias came in from the barn, holding something behind his back. May raised an eyebrow. "If that's another broken horseshoe you want me to turn into art, I'm going to start charging." Elias chuckled. "Close." He revealed a wooden sign, hand-carved and varnished. She took it gently, running her fingers over the name. "May's room." She looked up, blinking back tears. "You made this?" "Took 3 tries. It's crooked. Figured it matched the stitching." She laughed, placing a hand over her heart. "It's perfect." Later that evening, they sat on the porch as the sun melted into the horizon, casting the wheat field in a halo of gold. Elias held a worn book in one hand and a mug of tea in the other. May leaned her head against the post beside him, eyes half closed, heart wide open. "You ever miss the noise?" she asked. "Back when everything was moving and loud and fast." He shook his head. "I've had enough noise to last a lifetime." She turned to face him fully. "So have I." He set the book down and looked at her, not with longing, but with something deeper. Recognition, the kind that doesn't need words or proof, just presence. "I never thought peace would look like this," she said. "Me neither," he replied, "but now that it's here, I don't want to let it go." She reached for his hand. He met her halfway, and in that shared quiet, the hush of dusk, the rustle of wheat, the creak of the porch swing, they found something neither had dared to hope for, a place that didn't just take them in. It kept them. The lanterns flickered inside. The room with her name glowed with soft light. And as the stars gathered over the hills like old friends returning, one thing became clear. This wasn't a rescue. This was a homecoming for both of them. If this story touched something in you, it's because kindness and redemption still matter. Tell us in the comments, have you ever found peace in an unexpected place? Don't forget to subscribe for more stories that remind us all, even the quietest hearts deserve a home.